back everybody to Make It Up. If there's one red notebook that people remember that was used to activate a super assassin, it's probably the one in Civil War. It's top 5. It's probably top 5. So today I'm going to activate your creativity and teach you how to make one yourself using very basic ingredients. I'm using a Moleskine. This is the mid-sized red Moleskine Volant softcover journal, but you can use any kind of red journal you want. The only characteristic I think you need is a cover that has nice little texture on it, and also one that's made of something that won't absorb paint or water, because paint and water both coming. First step is the stencil. All you need is the 5-point star to attach the stencil to the journal. I use painter's tape because it's easy and it's cheap.
That's what she
Won't
said.
leave any marks. Now we're going to deboss the star around the edge, which basically just means tracing the edges and leaving a little indentation all the way around. I'm using a very fancy tool, which is known as a flathead screwdriver. You could use anything with a hard edge, but I would avoid super sharp things because the red cover on these journals, is that the skin? Is that the moleskin? Isn't super thick, so you could easily slice right through it. So I would recommend a hard but dull tool like the screwdriver. And now, sanding the star. I know this seems annoying, sanding never seems fun, but it's actually pretty crucial with this type of notebook because the skin on the cover is made to resist stuff sticking to it, which is great in normal circumstances, but actually terrible if you want to paint on it. So I rough it up with some steel wool just to give it a little bit of a tooth. This will help paint adhere to it. I'm using 000 steel wool, but any kind would probably work. Or if you wanted to use high grit sandpaper, that works too. Something like a 200 or finer would be good. I've tried it. It looks good. Now we got to make this star black. There's really no wrong way to do this step. I am using a sponge brush and some black acrylic paint. You could use a regular bristle brush, but that would leave brush strokes which aren't ideal for this prop. Spray painting could also work, but before you spray paint, you have to get everything completely masked off all the way around the edges. It'd be a lot more work. Also, I don't love spray painting in confined spaces, so I go with the sponge. This is just a regular cheap one from the craft store. Now, the most annoying part of this whole process is this old gal needs a couple coats, thin coats. So there's going to be some weighting required in between each coat. Also, hot tip, after each coat, lift the stencil off the cover a little bit, just so the paint doesn't dry like glue and keep the stencil stuck down, because that could lead to the stencil peeling the paint off later when we remove it for good. Again, speaking from experience. Anyway, paint takes about 5 to 10 minutes to dry. You could speed it up with a hairdryer if you want. Here it took me like 5 coats to get full coverage of the paint. You can do more, you can do less. I ain't your boss. Once the paint is fully dry, we're going to seal the star. I'm going to use a gloss Mod Podge just to give the star a little bit of a shine. But the main reason that I'm sealing it is to protect the star from the next step and for future wear and tear. If you don't have any good sealants around, you could use diluted Elmer's glue, like white glue, school glue. That stuff will also work as long as it dries clear. It's perfect. I usually only do 1 or 2 coats of sealant, once again using the sponge brush. Once the sealant is fully dry, the stencil can come off. It's Christmas! And you can skip this next step, but I like to clean up the edges of the star because there is inevitably a little bit of overpainting. It can be annoying, but it's very satisfying. I'm using a little touch knife along the edges, and as you can see, the overpainted bits will just scrape right off. Again, skip it if you want, but I like sharp edges. So here we find ourselves. Next step is weathering, where we make this thing dirty. I'm going to use a regular bristle brush and the same black acrylic paint that I used for the star. Some people, when weathering, use black shoe polish, or they use different types of paints. Those can totally work on this project and others, but for this, I'm an acrylic paint man and I like a brush. They're affordable, they're forgiving, it's the only way to fly. First step is to make sure you get plenty of paint in all the debossed lines around the star. From there, just brush it all over like you're painting a wall. I try to keep the brush strokes all in one direction, but sometimes things don't work out. Now this is the best part. You let that paint dry, not too long, again only 5 or 10 minutes. You can tell when it's dry by looking at it. Then you get a rag or a paper towel, add some water. I use a little spray bottle because it keeps things more precise, and you start scrubbing. The thing to keep in mind here is you kind of want to do a bad job at cleaning it, so don't soak the paper towel and don't be too aggressive with your scrubbing. You can always do a second or a third scrubbing if it's still too dirty, but if you go too hard out of the gate and wipe all the paint off, then you got to repaint it, wait for it to dry again. It's a whole thing. The goal here is to make it look dirty and old, but naturally dirty and old. So I try not to do the same motion the entire time. Some circular scrubs, some swipes, some dabs. You don't want it looking too regular or too planned. It's hard to define, but you'll know it when you see it. Let the front dry completely, then you can flip it over, do the same thing on the back, and don't forget to do the spine. And that's it, you're done. If you like this video, please let me know, because I have no idea. Maybe there's a much easier and better way to do this. I don't know. Please tell me. Now, if you want a Bucky journal but don't want to make one yourself, I completely understand. I can make one for you. My website's right there. It's also linked in the description. I have these journals. I have other prop type things. I have prints. I have stickers. I have t-shirts. They're all just waiting there for you. Oh, and leave a comment and let me know what you want to see me make next. Doesn't have to be notebook related, but yeah, it could be. Maybe I can build the house from the notebook. Might take more than 10 minutes. Okay, that's it. Bye.